It's hard to imagine that summer is coming to an end, that we're already in September, and those calendar days are quickly slipping away towards November. But on election night, regardless of who wins the White House, there's one sector that's poised to continue its expansion, and it's already proven to be resilient in 2020. Hi, I'm Matthew Carr, Chief Trend Strategist for the Oxford Club, and welcome to this week's episode of Market Trends. Cannabis is one of those areas that is my specialty. I've talked about it many times here at Market Trends. We've mentioned Grow Generation, especially buying those shares before that August 13th second quarter report. We've talked about innovative industrial properties and TrueLeaf. And it's been a fantastic year for U.S. cannabis, especially since those lows we saw in March. Already, the U.S. marijuana index is up more than 150% since that bottom on March 18th. But this could just be part of a much longer rally. Because over the next couple of months, American cannabis is poised to get even bigger, as well as maybe seeing some legislative support, which would provide a fantastic tailwind to shares. At the moment, there are a dozen adult use markets in the United States, as well as more than 36 medicinal markets. And for 2020, expectations are that adult use sales will top $10 billion, with medical sales coming somewhere in between $5 and $7 billion, maybe even topping that number. So despite the global pandemic, we're already seeing that U.S. cannabis companies are seeing their sales boom. And we know that by 2024, we're looking at what was potentially being a $37 billion industry and what I believe will be an $80 billion industry by the end of the decade here in the United States. Now, up ahead, we have some very key moments. For example, on election night, there are 5 more states with approved legalization measures on the ballot: Arizona, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, and South Dakota, right? So that's going to already expand those markets that exist. On top of that, we then have states like Pennsylvania, where the governor is pushing for adult use legalization because it's facing this massive budget shortfall. And that's a story that I expect to hear repeated again and again over the next several months. Now, on top of all of that, which is fantastic news, we then have the fact that in September, the House is going to vote on the Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act. What this measure does is looks to remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, as well as expunge some criminal records. There's little doubt that the House is going to pass the MORE Act, and that should actually provide a little bit of a tailwind to cannabis shares as well. So over the next couple of months, you have all of these opportunities, not only for expansion, but for possible legislative support. And then that has nothing to do with who's going to win the White House. That has nothing to do with that election. So I think American cannabis still offers the greatest opportunity for investors because of its size and because of how rapidly it is continuing to expand. So today I want to talk about one of my favorite companies in this space, Green Thumb Industries. The company now has 48 dispensaries across 10 states nationwide. But more importantly, Green Thumb is winning the revenue race. Back in the first quarter, this was the first cannabis company ever, American or Canadian, to report more than $100 million in quarterly revenue. In the second quarter, it just reported $119.6 million in revenue, and it has now made more money in the first 6 months of 2020 than it did in all of 2019. Beyond that, the company is becoming more and more profitable. So that's something that you really want to see as an investor. You want to see these sales rocketing higher. We know that cannabis sales are going to continue to push higher, but then we also want to see that as it expands, that is becoming more and more profitable. And that is exactly the setup that Green Thumb has. And as I said, it is winning the race in terms of sales for not only American cannabis, but also Canadian. So this is a company that I very much like, especially for what we have on the horizon. And I think it's one that investors should definitely be taking a look at. Now, there are a lot of excellent opportunities in the US cannabis space that I do think investors should be paying attention to. And I know some of you are like, well, I don't want to just target one company. I want to take the ETF route. I have one word of warning on ETFs, and that is if you're going to go that route, realize that a lot of them are heavily weighted to Canadian companies. That means you're not really getting very much US exposure. With that being said, this week there was the launch of the ADVISORSHARES Pure US Cannabis ETF. Ticker symbol is MSOS, multi-state operators, MSOs, get it? Now this ETF is focused just on US MSOs and as well as cannabis real estate investment trusts like Innovative Industrial, hydroponics suppliers like Grow Generation, and these other part suppliers. So if you wanted to take the ETF route, that is the one that I would suggest. And thankfully, it just happened to launch this week, right before all of these catalysts that we have on the horizon. Despite the dumpster fire that 2020 has been, it's been a rebound year for US cannabis. And over the next couple of months, the outlook and prospects for American MSOs are only going to get brighter. That is going to send shares on a fantastic run. But here's the deal. Here's what makes all this even better. The American market is large enough that it can support more than one major, like a Green Thumb Industries. So that is an opportunity that I don't think investors should ignore or allow to go up in smoke. I'm Matthew Carr, Chief Trend Strategist for the Oxford Club. Thank you for watching this episode of Market Trends. For more information like this, be sure to go down to the description and sign up for my free e-letter. Until next time, here's to high returns.